Welcome to the latest episode of Branding the Experience, where we discuss ways how we can create environments where employees actually want to come to work and customers want to keep coming back. Hi, I'm your host for Branding the Experience, Ken Bader, and we have a great guest today who's going to talk to us about decision making because he's the founder of Excellent Decisions. His name is Robert MacPhee. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He is a leadership coach and consultant. He is the former director of training for Jack Canfield. Say hi to Jack for me. If you're familiar with Jack, you should be. Chicken Soup for the Soul, the Success Principles, all that. He was a founding member of the Transformational Leadership Council, a co-founder of the Southern California Association of Transformational Leaders, the author of the Manifest, that's easy for me to say, Manifesting for Non-Gurus book and partner journal, and the creator of the Excellent Decisions approach. And I'm just going to stop there because I want to talk about Excellent Decisions. Robert MacPhee, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Yes, it's good to be here. And it's just hilarious that the show is about branding. And my branding used to be around that book title that was so hard to get through. And the new branding is all about excellent decisions, which has been spot on. So it's perfect. Perfect intro.
Thank you. Every once in a while, I actually introduce a person properly. So if I obviously got it today. That works. But yeah, I had the pleasure of meeting you at New Media Summit, and in looking at all of the great topics that you talk about, I really gravitated to Excellent Decisions because you talk about vision and values there. And I think that's so important to not only in the creation of the culture, but also in how that transfers to branding the experience. I'm sure being a Jack Canfield guy, I'm sure you could attest to that.
Yeah, well, the whole work around Excellent Decisions, the definition that emerged for me is decisions that are made based on vision and values and a real strong sense of value rather than stress and pressure. And in today's world, there's so much stress and pressure for young people, for people in business, for all of us. It becomes more and more important to have the kind of clarity that you talked about what our values are, what's really important to us, and what is our vision? What are we really trying to create? And in my experience, the degree to which people know how to and know the importance of making decisions and taking actions based on their vision, their values, their value, rather than that stress and pressure, is the degree to which people accomplish what they want to accomplish. The results last. And it doesn't need to be so difficult. You mentioned, do you know Jack? Had you met him before? Or?
I do not know Jack. I'm
Okay.
sure he knows all about me, of course, but, obviously I'm kidding, but I have had the pleasure of reading some of Jack's work.
Yeah, well, he was an incredible mentor, and the opportunity to work with him and learn from him was really just amazing. I tell people as a parent, my kids are older now, they're 22, 24, and 26, but imagine you're hanging out with Jack Canfield while your kids are growing up, and I really saw the difference. They're one of the environments that I have that I can really see when people are clear about vision and values and value, what a big difference it can really make in their lives.
Right. Well, how would you define, because I work with vision and values all the time. I call them two of the most valuable organization drivers out there. How do you define vision and values? Because there's a number of different definitions out there depending upon what business book you pick up here and there.
Yeah, and there is a lot of different information out there. I don't claim to have the right answer. I have the context that I used in our work. And for vision, what we use is a point in time in the future. And it's very closely connected to goals, which is what we want. Goals tend to be pretty simple, real valuable, but very simple. But when we take our goals and create a vision around them, it means creating a point in the future. And we can choose what that point is. It could be a month down the road or a year or several years. Doesn't really matter. But we create a point in the future and we say, what is it going to mean for my overall life in all different aspects when I achieve that goal? So we have people who have weight loss goals or they have money goals, whatever it is. And if they have a goal, let's say to double their income in the next 6 months, I say put a stake in the ground 6 months from now and get really clear about what that's going to mean when you do it. who are you going to be hanging around with? What are you going to be doing? What's going to be different in your life? And create a very clear vision in your mind. One of the things I learned from Jack is the mind can't tell the difference between a real event and a vividly imagined event. So every time we get really clear in our mind, we start thinking of ways to make that happen. So that's the power of that vision of a point in time that we're imagining that this is going to happen, and it directs us. Now, with values, this is the why behind it. People ask me about, well, vision and values and value, where's purpose? And I say, well, purpose for me comes in, if you have a vision and it's in alignment with your values, then in my world, you're on purpose. Like those two things together add up to purpose. And values, we look at in two different ways. One is in terms of what's important to us. It can be a very simple question. I could sit here and ask you, like, what is important to you? What else is important to you? We can put those things in order. You can get a sense, the more I ask you, the more annoying it gets, but the deeper you go, right? You go, what else is important to you? What else is important to you? And you get to the first things that come up about money and cars and houses, and, those kinds of things are kind of easy. But when we really do the deeper values work, we connect to people's desire to make a contribution and wanting to help people, and their family and their health and things like this are generally the types of things that end up on the top of their list. There's another side of values that we look at that we call states of being, which is how we want to show up in the world. I might want to double my income. I might, want to take care of my family. That's all fine and important. But what about how? Like, what are the words, what are the adjectives that would describe? Does someone want to be, energetic, or do they want to be calm and peaceful? Do they want to be unconditionally loving, or do they want to be a real go-getter? Whatever it is. And again, there's not necessarily any right or wrong answers, but it tends to be different. Like those states of being that we want to show up in, combined with what it is we want and why we want it, is what adds up to values in our world.
Right. No, I appreciate what you said, especially that it's not necessarily the right way or the only way, but it's a way. I often say that too. My definition of vision is very, very close to yours. Values is very close as well. I usually call it the who we are at our core. But you're getting to the same place. And the point that I always make to clients is whether you use my framework or Jack Canfield's framework or Stephen Covey's framework or whatever framework it is, as long as it makes sense and it's moving you and your business forward, then great. But it has to have a certain it has to be aligned, and it has to have the components that you need in it. Is that
Yes,
on point?
I would totally agree. Yeah, I would totally agree. And there's also something really important about timing with these questions too, because when people do the work before they're faced with a stressful situation or a really important decision that they have to make, then the stressful situations get much easier to handle because we can be driven by our vision and values. The really important decisions, not that they're always easier, but they can be much clearer if we've done the vision and values work and we look and say, okay, like you said, my core self, like who I really am, what's really important to me, what would that person do in this situation? Because the truth is, when we're in those like high stress, high pressure situations where we have to make an important decision or we have to handle a situation on the fly, that is the worst time to be trying to figure out our vision and values and come up with criteria. And that's where we see people who fall back on the stress and the pressure of the situation or of just the world we live in with, media and social media and friends and family and coworkers and bosses. And, we're just bombarded. We know what everyone else wants us to do and thinks we should do. But sadly, a lot of people don't really have that clear sense of who they are and what's most important to them, so they can kind of shut out the rest of it and say, oh no. And it works organizationally too.
Right.
As an organization, as an individual, this is what we're about. I'm doing some work with a company in San Diego right now that has a really great culture. And they're growing, their big change. Like when I'm working with companies, it's because they're usually experiencing some kind of change or desiring some sort of change. Their change is growth. They're actually shipping 600% more product this year than they were this time last year. So they're trying to maintain their culture, but they have this culture that's driving them through this really, I mean, if you're going to pick your problem, this is a good problem to have, right?
Yeah.
600% growth, but it's still a challenge.
Sure.
They had 180 open job postings the last time I visited them.
Wow.
And that's a challenge. They have
Yeah.
all these new people and new managers, and it's a challenge. But their mission, their vision, their sense of purpose, their vision and values is continuing to drive them because they did all that work ahead of time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're spot on. Those organization drivers, however you define them and label them, are so key. I always think back, especially when it comes to vision, because I love what you said earlier about vision tying to goals. That when I do strategy, we have to have a very, very clear vision before we do goal setting, because I want to know from a goal setting standpoint, how are we going to achieve this vision? How are we going to lead ourselves through all these steps? I even had one client years ago who's no longer a client that fought me and says, we got a mission statement. We don't need a vision and all this other crap. And I'm like, well, all right, I'm not going to fight you on this, but it's going to be very difficult to really hone in on goals if we don't have a vision. And to give you an example, and I want your take on this because it's one of my favorite stories. In the 90s, and most of my background is in the financial industry. In the 90s, I was working with a financial institution, and they had a vision that I'll paraphrase it, said something to the effect that they would be one of the technology leaders in their sector. And they had the management and the board in this big planning session, and everybody was fighting about this new home banking program. This is even before apps. This is when home banking was, just starting to be a thing, and it was going to take a ton of resources. And a lot of the people that wanted to pinch a penny says, no, we can't do it. It doesn't make sense. It's too much. It's going to tax our staff, da-da-da-da-da. And the CEO, I give her so much credit. She listened and listened and listened and finally stood up and said, look, she grabbed a sheet of paper with the mission, vision, and values on it. Says, according to our vision, we're going to be the technological leader. And in order to do that, the way I understand it is we need to adopt this home banking system. So we need to do one of two things before we leave here today. Either A, we're going to find the resources to adopt this home banking system, or B, we're changing our vision statement. Your choice. They found the resources, by the way.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example of what I was saying about doing the work ahead of time. If that organization had not created that vision, then either the CEO would have had to stand up and say, okay, that's all interesting conversation, but here's what I think we're going to do. And, the old school, we'll do it that way because I said we're going to do it that way kind of leadership, which just isn't as effective in today's world. People require something more sophisticated, more collaborative than that to create an environment. I know your organization is really committed to engagement, like creating a really engaging environment. And if your boss comes in and listens to everybody, but then tells them what they're going to do anyway, that's not engagement. It's not going to fly. It's a perfect example.
Yeah. If you don't have those core values and the vision, it's extremely difficult to create an experience for your employees, and then almost impossible to create a consistent branded experience for your customers. It's obvious that the organization that you talked about that's growing, what was it, 600% or something like that, obviously has done that because it's very difficult to reach those numbers without having done that kind of work ahead of time.
Well, they're in the biotech world too. That whole industry goes just crazy. They had their real lows, and now they're experiencing a real high, and they're probably squirreling some nuts away to prepare for the next low. Your story about the bank also brings up a really good point too, about the necessity of having all of these pieces in place, because they were working on goals and they were making a decision about like strategy and planning and what they were going to do. Sounds to me like in some ways they were resetting or setting a goal.
Correct.
And sometimes organizations get confused, like they think they already have a vision in place, but what it really is a goal.
Right.
Having a goal with a time on it is not a vision. Like the vision of being, the leader in technology in our industry, that's a vision.
Right.
It's a mission. It's not really a goal. Then you have to come up with specific goals to make that specific and measurable. How will we know? So they were working on having goals and a vision. I've gone into work with organizations that, oh no, we don't need to do that vision and values work. That's already done. We got it all.
Yeah.
Don't worry. That's finished. And I look, and what they have is a list of goals.
Yeah.
Well, again, I got nothing against goals. Goals are a really important part of the process. What gets measured gets done. Setting a benchmark, setting a target, really important part of the process. Right. But my work is all about having that process be driven by the vision and the values,
right,
as with the goals as a target. So.
Right, exactly. No, completely agree. So why excellent decisions? Why not, okay decisions or even outstanding or perfect decisions? Why excellent decisions?
That's a great question. The actual branding around this came out of some work that I was doing with young people. I was doing work with colleges and universities for a period of time. And the idea of making decisions based on vision and values, I didn't even have the concept of value, which came in largely with business and financial goals. But vision and values versus stress and pressure, because our young people are faced with so much stress and pressure. And I can't say there was like a specific incident or situation that made it excellent decisions, but the decision-making component as the bridge between the inner work of looking at vision and values and what's really important in our habits and our thoughts and all of that, and then the outward expression of it when we're taking action and getting out there and engaging and expressing who we really are, I realized that the decisions we make are the bridge between those two. That we never go from all that inner work into action without making a decision. So the decision, that point of decision making came really, really important. And I don't know if anybody else has ever really asked me that about why excellent versus outstanding or incredible.
That's
or
how I roll. I ask the stupid.
I will. I'll answer it kind of. I'll answer it kind of backwards though, because there's two things. There's two things that came up. One of them you might want to edit out of your podcast. I'll leave it up to you. But the first thing was and this is not that long ago. This is 3 to 4 years ago at this point that I completely rebranded my business to Excellent Decisions. Same core content, but focused on excellent decisions versus the book. Sure. And when I went to see if the domain name Excellent Decisions was available, and I honestly thought it wouldn't be. I thought I was going to have to do some crazy, excellentdecisions.uk and move to England or something. But it was available. Excellentdecisions.com was available. So we grabbed it, obviously, and it's worked out really well as a brand. And the second part, and this is the part you might want to edit out, the one issue I've had, and maybe this is why the domain name, everybody likes to abbreviate everything, right?
Right.
You need to have acronyms. So when I first started, looking for an acronym for Excellent Decisions, the first thing I came up with was ED. But ED is already taken for something else, with men's health. And I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. So we use XD. It actually works out perfectly. We just go XD instead of ED.
I am absolutely positively not editing that out, because that is, the show is branding the experience, and part of the experience is the actual visual and message of the brand. And that's a great example. I've messed up on some of those URLs too, where somebody has said, you really want to do that. You probably don't want the brand association of ED, but I do like.
But XD works perfectly. So
yeah,
it all ended up working out in the end. And what you were saying about branding, I am literally a living example of that. Because when I stopped working with Jack Canfield, actually, I wrote my book, which you mentioned, Manifesting for Non-Gurus.
Right.
And the idea was you can manifest, you can create in your life. You don't need to go live in a cave for 10 years. You don't need to be a guru. Anyone can do it. In fact, we're all already doing it. And I'm very proud of the book. It's a great book. People love it. I get great feedback. But what I learned was that Manifesting for Non-Gurus is a terrible brand. And I'm embarrassed to say it took me like 4 to 5 years to figure it out. But for my ideal client, for a business, for a leader, for an organization, somewhere I can leverage the work that I do and make a real difference, they weren't interested in manifesting, and they weren't interested in gurus. Yeah. So the whole thing just went, I would see their eyes roll back in their head, and they'd say, okay, well, thanks for coming, but no, thank you.
But they
As
are
soon as I
interested in
switched,
excellent decisions.
absolutely, it was almost surreal, the difference. So when people are looking at a question like that, what I experienced with going from Manifesting for Non-Gurus, clever title, the book is great. Again, I'm very proud of it. The content's awesome,
Yeah.
but the brand itself simply didn't work. It didn't resonate with the client that I was reaching out to. And literally the minute I've gone through and looked at my financials, when I worked with someone to do my rebranding and I switched it all over to Excellent Decisions,
Mhm.
everything in my business did 108. It was like, that whole 20 years to create an overnight success kind of thing. That's what it
Yeah.
was like. And it was almost exclusively because of the brand, because the core work I'm doing is still the same.
Right, right. If it makes you feel any better, my book, The Formula for Business Success equals B plus C plus S. Nobody likes that title. It's too long. Yeah, I did. Frankly, I will admit, as a branding expert, I did not think that through well enough. But when I tell prospective clients that I host a show called Branding the Experience, that resonates, that they get,
Yep.
because they can understand what that means. Like, B, C, where are you going with that? So even
Yeah.
even the smartest of us could screw up on brand names, but
Yes. Soon as you get to that point where you pass the tell me more about that fit test, right? Is when you share
yeah,
your brand and people go, ooh, tell me more about that. Never happened before. Happens all the time now. Like,
yeah.
total game changer.
Exactly, exactly.
Mm.
So when it comes to excellent decisions, obviously, especially in stressful times, and at the time of taping this, we're definitely at a stressful time in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. The obvious is to go back to your rudder or your core and go to those values and vision. But is there anything else that you can suggest in terms of making excellent decisions, especially during stress? Is there another tip or two that you would give to our audience that if you find yourself in this rough situation, if you go to this or get yourself in possibly this mind space, that can help you as well?
Yeah, and I promise I'll answer the question, but I want to touch on something you said about
Please.
how, we're actually recording this at the time where we're in a really crazy time. The stress and pressure that I'm talking about that we don't want to have driving our decisions is ramped up hugely right now. And one of the things I'm seeing that's making it really difficult for people is this idea of a vision, putting a stake in the ground in the future
Yeah.
is really hard right now. I'm actually really struggling with it myself. Because the truth is, we're now looking ahead into a very uncertain time, to establish a vision and say, here's who I am, and here's what I want to be, and here's the results I want to create, whatever, 6 months down the road from right now, as we record this, it's really unknown. Like, we
Yeah.
really don't know. And to me, it's a good reminder of how important it is to have a vision, because I'm experiencing what happens when I don't have a vision.
Right.
My own vision is like all turbulence now, and I'm really not sure. There's a lot of uncertainty there. So that's really important. As far as your question about, aside from vision and values, we did add a third category about your value. And again,
Oh,
especially in business and finance, another huge part, along with that rebranding that I talked about, for me and my business success, was getting really clear about my value that I bring to the marketplace.
mm,
And we can have, great goals and a great vision and, really clear about what's important to us. But if we're not really clear about the value that we bring to the people that we serve, my experience is that things are going to be a struggle. It's
yeah.
it's kind of like dragging an anchor. Everything's going to be more difficult. But when we do get really clear, like right now in this particular time, I'm really clear that there has truly never been a more important time to be knowing what it means and how important it is to make excellent decisions, to
Hmm.
have clarity about your vision and your values and your value, and be able to handle the external stress and pressure that's just, crashing like waves on a beach right now. So that would be one thing. The other thing that comes to mind is a concept in my work called letting go of attachments.
Hmm.
And I think, again, this is something that's really, really important right now. But um, gratitude comes in as a really important part of letting go of attachments, like as we look ahead, we'd like to know how things are going to go. We'd like to have it all figured out. Right now, we can't do that. We need to let go of any attachment to having it all figured out. We need to let go of the attachment to what other people think we should do. And in some cases, the attachment to our own opinion of what we're capable of or what we're not capable of. So there's a concept I teach called high intention but low attachment. And the degree to which people can be really clear about what it is they're after, what they're trying to achieve, what they're trying to accomplish, what kind of, not just results, but experiences they want to create in their life, but also not attached. And gratitude is a huge part of that, because if we're really grateful for everything we have now, then we tend to be less attached. Like, I need to make more money, or I need to lose weight, or I need to find the right relationship, whatever it might be. If we're not in that I have to, I need to, if we're in a space of gratitude and appreciation for everything we have now, we open up to the ideas and the insights and the opportunities that may have been right there in front of us, but we were so to me, relationships are the best opportunity. We can all think back to when we were single and we met somebody who really needed to be in a relationship, right? I need to find somebody, and it's so unattractive, literally, not beautiful, attractive, but am I attracted? Am I drawn to that person? No, right. It's I want to run in the other direction. and when we're just out meeting people and having fun and we have no attached, whether we're going to get in a relationship or not, that's how I met my wife. We've been married 30 years. I met her coming out of a horrible relationship. I was as unattached as anybody could ever be. Yeah. And it's really critical, in terms of how we can put ourselves in a place to make, now that I think about it, if I've married 30 years, that was probably a pretty good decision, right?
That sounds like an
decision.
I was just going to say, that sounds like an excellent decision.
I hope she agrees. I'll ask her later.
Yeah, it was definitely, I'm sure it was an excellent decision on your part, maybe not on hers, but that's a whole nother show. But I say that about my wife too. I was going through a divorce and was so unattached and so uninterested in being in a relationship, and just happened by happenstance to meet my wife. And I always say that aside from business, the best decision that I ever made, especially better than anything I've ever did in business, was getting married to my wife Peggy. But before this becomes a whole Valentine's Day type of or Sweetest Day type of episode, I really I appreciated everything that you said. But in speaking about the importance of vision and the times that we're in now, because you're exactly right. We really don't know what this is going to look like. I actually, frankly, in talking to clients and also talking to some of my providers, I have a better feel, frankly, of what things may look like 2 years from now than I do 2 months from now. I am pretty darn confident in going back on the history books and looking at pandemics that 2 years from now, that coronavirus isn't going to be an issue. We're going to have a vaccine. We're going to come on the other side of this, and in some way, shape, or form, business is going to either be back to normal or will be in a new normal. But it's 2 months from now that, frankly, scares the crap out of me, because I have no idea what 2 months is going to look like.
I would totally agree. There's a tremendous amount of uncertainty, and you and I were talking, I think, before we hit record about, I'm somebody who travels and works with groups as part of my business. It's a big part of my business, and right now that's completely gone away. And there's a lot of people out there, coaches and speakers and consultants, and people in the hospitality industry, the restaurant industry, the hotels, the airlines. I totally agree with you. And honestly, I feel pretty confident that I'm going to be okay. However long this takes, I feel like I'm going to be okay because of the resources that I have in place. Yeah. The truth is, there's a lot of people out there who, in a matter of weeks, not months, are really going to be struggling. And it's a very strange time now, where I live in Northern California, and I'm in Sonoma, up in the wine country. And the year I moved here was the year the fires were here. And what I saw in the community was all these people who want to reach out and help. And we could do it, right? We could leave our homes and go out and help. And now I see people who want to help, but they can't. Yeah. They can't go out and help. But there are a lot of people who are really going to need help. They're going to need
Yeah.
support. And I'm hopeful that kind of the human spirit, the positive side that I saw when the fires were here will come out. And
Yeah.
whatever we need to do to get through those 2 months or 3 months or however long it is, that people will really show up to support each other. And I think, again, going back to vision and values,
Hmm.
when I do deep values work with people, I rarely have somebody who comes up with, oh, pandemic, I just want to see how much money I could possibly make out of this deal.
Yeah.
When you really get to people's values, and we do it in a way that they're not just telling me what they think I want to hear, but what's
Yeah.
really important to them. They will want to contribute to their community. They will want to take care of the people that are closest to them. They will want what's best for everyone. Um, but again, sometimes people haven't really taken a look at that ahead of time. So
Yeah.
we see stories of people filling their garage with Purell, trying to make a profit or whatever.
Yeah, I can't even get a damn roll of toilet paper down here in Los Angeles County. Fortunately, I've got enough for a while, so nobody has to send me, any Charmin or anything. But yeah, that part of it is ridiculous to me. But fortunately, I do see, going back to values, and I speak of this in another business that I run, is that at least 9 out of 10, maybe 9.5 out of 10 in terms of an average. I'm seeing people that are natural leaders, really stepping up to another leadership level, and people that normally aren't leaders, frankly, that are stepping up to be leaders. I think given my Chicago background, I think when you see that 1 out of 10 or half out of 10, it really highlights what a jagoff that person
Yeah.
is. But
Yeah.
fortunately,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
it's not the normal. It's
yeah,
clearly not the normal. Yeah. And you bring up a really good point
yeah,
about the leadership element too,
yeah,
because with all this excellent decisions work, I actually call it a leadership program.
hmm,
And I use it to define leadership too, because I believe that if people are clear about their vision and their values, and they are making decisions and taking action based on their vision and values,
yeah,
then they are a leader by definition. And I mean that even if nobody's following them, or even if they're not in a position of leadership. They could be the person at the front desk, they could be the person answering the phone. But if they're really connected and living into their own vision and values, which is in alignment with the organization's vision and values, that person in my book is a leader.
yeah,
And I also think it's hugely important for young people to know that too. Again, with
sure,
all the stress and pressure that they're faced with, if you are faced with a situation where, it's whether it's whatever all these young people are faced with, the drinking and the drugs and the
yeah,
sex and whatever, all these, talk about excellent decisions, the
hmm,
stress and pressure that young people are under. But if they're walking away because they have a sense of their own vision and values, and they're saying no to
hmm,
things, even though there's a tremendous amount of peer pressure, I call that a huge leadership move. And I
yeah.
think those are going to be the people in the future who are going to be leading our organizations for sure.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. And fortunately, in that Gen Z, much as I've seen in that millennial generation, despite the rumors that millennials, can't be managed and aren't leaders and only care about their cell phones, I will say personally, I have seen a lot of great millennial entrepreneurs and executives step up now and have stepped up for years, and I expect to see the same from Gen Z. And I will say also, to your point on how some lives are going to change, people in our roles of speaking and consulting and working with groups. I will say that about 5 years ago, I didn't even know what the heck a podcast was, and I made the excellent decision, which didn't seem to be excellent at the time, to embrace this technology and embrace this way of promoting my business and connecting with other thought leaders like yourself. And I thank the Lord that I made that excellent decision, because I'm doing sessions and all kinds of things virtually that I just wouldn't have been able to do 5 years ago. And if I hadn't have made that pivot, I'd be scrambling around like some folks that I unfortunately do know that haven't
Yep.
embraced this technology. But we're in a good space. One decision I made that was excellent is asking you to be on this show, Robert.
There you go. Anytime I can get the definition of an excellent decision, that's a good day for me. So
There
I
you
appreciate
go.
you saying that.
Well, the last question that I have for you is for the folks in our audience that need to tap into your brilliance and your expertise, how best can they find you?
Well, you've heard me say it enough times. I mentioned the website already, excellentdecisions.com. Very simple. My phone number, email address. I don't have 12 gatekeepers. You can definitely get me from there. If people want to take a quick peek, it's kind of some foundational work of what I do. There's a free video available on the site that is excellentdecisions.com/joy, J-O-Y. And it talks about the dynamics of change and some of these things we talked about with goal setting. Why do people experience resistance to goals even when they know it's something that's really good for them? So that video is available to people, and especially right now as we're landlocked and sheltered at home and everything, happy to connect with people and support you and your audience in any way that I possibly can. So excellentdecisions.com, best way to connect with me.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Robert. And for all the folks out there, definitely go watch that video. Go to excellentdecisions.com. Do not go to ed.com unless that's something that you really need. There's no shame in. Yes, there's no shame in that, but that's not what we're talking about.
That, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It's a different podcast.
Yes, and not one that I happen to be producing. But Robert, thank you so much for joking around with us a little bit, sharing that story because it's both funny and valuable, and most importantly, giving us a lot of great insight today.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much for inviting me.
My pleasure. Thank you again. And thank you to all of you in the audience that joined us today. And here's hoping, as always, that you're branding the experience at a very high level for all those you serve. Take care. Thank you for watching Branding the Experience. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're looking for a speaker on branding the experience, on workplace culture, or on business strategy, I have a number of different options for you, and my approach is always to entertain first, engage second, and educate third. It's a formula that leaves my audience not only laughing and enjoying, but also learning. So if you want a great speaker on branding, culture building, or strategy, I'd like to hear from you. Simply send me an email at kbator, B-A-T-O-R, at btcinc.net, or to learn more about the presentations that I've done that have been successful in the past, go to www.btcinc.net.